Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Elland Road, where it's very much the calm after the storm and a really unwelcome storm for Norwich City. There, the lights are on here, but the lights have gone out on their championship campaign in humiliating fashion. Really, Norwich were terrible tonight. You can't brush it up as anything else. Tactically, they were exposed. They were outdone. They were not at the races. The players have let themselves down, and yeah, it will provoke a lot of questions about, I think, the changes which to come. It's obviously finished here tonight. Leeds United 4, Norwich 0. That is a scoreline that does not flatter Norwich City at all. In fact, if you added a couple on, it wouldn't have flattered Norwich at all. Leeds are an excellent side. They've got an excellent coach, particularly at this level. Norwich fans know that all too well, and they by far and away deserve it. And there was 17 points, I think, between the two teams in the season, and you look on the evidence of tonight, and goodness me, it felt like an absolute chasm between them. Norwich was so far apart. This wasn't even competitive, and I think, and I speak about this a lot, and I spoke about this a lot when Norwich lost at Plymouth, and when they've gone to various other places and perhaps not been at their best, or they've lost in a way that hasn't quite a really bad performance and a really, really bad scoreline. And I've said before that there's ways to lose football matches, and that is by giving your all, by competing, by making it difficult for your opponents, by having a threat at the other end of the pitch, by just being in the game, by limiting, by showing passion. And there was none of that today, I'm afraid. This was a Norwich team. I mean, before the game, Leeds fans were waving white scarves above their heads. I think probably after about 20 minutes, some of Norwich City's players were doing the same and waving white flags, because this was a really difficult night, I think, for everybody connected with Norwich City. And probably it's difficult to argue that this is the right outcome in terms of how the season has gone. They deserve to be playing Championship football next season, and they have done little more to show why they should be in the Premier League. And the fact that they've had 2 shots on target over 2 legs, they've offered very little in a way of attacking threat. I felt that Carrow Road was a real missed opportunity, I have to be honest. And it turns out that Norwich could have won that by 2 clear goals, and they would have lost pretty comfortably. When you're playing a team that've got Somerville, Nonto, Ruter, Pirot, it's always going to be difficult. But what you can't do is make it easier for them by exposing the space that they leave, by not shuffling across when you manage to shuffle, by leaving massive holes in midfield. And tactically they were really, really poor tonight. And it's difficult. Is that down to the players and the players not turning up for an occasion where really they should be getting up for? Is it the manager and the way that he set them up? Is it a combination of both? Probably. And for all of the experience and all of the know-how that they've got, not just in their dressing room and the players on the pitch, but also the coaching team who have won the playoffs before, maybe there was too much emphasis placed on that being enough to see Norwich City through, because this was an embarrassment, really, an embarrassment in front of a national and global audience. And Norwich will have to suck up and take what will likely come their way, I suspect, from Ipswich fans, who are obviously delighting in what's been a miraculous season for them and whatnot, Leeds fans and everybody else. And it's I don't want to dwell on the game too much. I mean, everyone's seen it. I don't think anyone wants to spend any more minutes talking about it. Norwich City conceded really soft goals. They could have conceded far more than they did. They were really bad. That is the assessment of the game, really. And it I think provokes a lot of questions when you've got Kenny McLean coming up and saying they did everything wrong. And there was much said about coming here, quieting the crowd down, managing periods and managing 20-minute spells throughout the game. So then to find yourself 2-0 down after 20 minutes, I mean, that is disastrous. That is about as bad as you can get in this place, with the crowd as it was. They obviously then scored the third before half-time. That put the game beyond all kind of doubts. Norwich City would have to achieve something miraculous, something probably only seen in the Bible, really, to get out of here with anything. And then, the tone for the second half was set really by Joel Pirot smashing a shot against Angus Gunn within the first minute. And it's just there were players that waved the white flag out there tonight, and that I think is the bit that will hurt Norwich City the most, because everyone knows how much work and how much effort has gone into getting them here. And it is a remarkable turnaround. So it's a really sad way that it's ended, but it's difficult to say that this was the right outcome on a season that's been so bizarre, so bizarre. From a 6-2 defeat at Plymouth to the high points, 15 or whatever it is games unbeaten at Carrow Road, some wonderful goals, and yet it's all just felt a little bit meh, to be honest. From the start to the finish, it's felt difficult to kind of connect with, engage with, and I think this is what supporters have kind of spoken about. And I've been kind of racking my brains throughout the season, really, to try and put my finger on what exactly is missing, what exactly that sort of element is that is missing. And it is that, I think. It's connectivity. You've got a fan base there who isn't aligned, isn't wedded, doesn't really want what is being served up and produced. And of course, you can say that Norwich City are carried by individualism, particularly at Cotterill Road, and there is an element of truth in that. But equally, you can say, on the other hand, you've got to have a coach to create a structure to allow those individuals to flourish. So there is a two way of looking at it. The away record this year has been abysmal. 6 wins on the road. To end it like this, to have the record that they've got against the bottom 6 in the Championship is appalling. Really, it's the 6th worst. Was obviously the sixth worst away record in the whole division over the 46 games. That for a club that has and had aspirations of getting promoted out of this league, that's not good enough. So it all comes back to me, I think, to approach and to what I feel has been the major point of struggle and a major point of disconnectivity, I guess, throughout this season. And that is the fact that Norwich City have changed and they've altered and they have stepped away from the recruitment policy, from the style of play, from the way they operated as a club that they brought everyone on a journey for 4 years, obviously culminating in Daniel Farke getting the sack. And everything since then has felt a little bit frenzied, a little bit reactive, a little bit in a state of flux. And now you've got a position where you've got a head coach who, David Wagner has, I'm sure Norwich fans will agree, conducted himself with integrity. He's been put in some difficult positions. I can only imagine how exhausting it has been this season to navigate what he has navigated, without a shadow of a doubt. But equally, you've got a manager there who is almost every week casting a football club into the spell of an underdog and is pragmatically minded, and that's the first way of thinking. I think, this is just my view, Norwich as a club, as a football club, need to discover kind of what they are again, because this year has felt very short-term, very plugging holes, basically throwing things and hoping that something sticks, signing loads of experienced players. That's not joined up with a way of thinking which is about promotion of young players and trying to develop young players and getting them to where you need to be. That isn't about progressing the club for the next 2 or 3 years. It's always been about the next 2 or 3 months or the next 2 or 3 games, and that is a cycle that I think football clubs can fall into, and they're a little bit lost and they lack definition. And as such, I think the fans have, and I don't want to speak for all the fans because I'm sure there's lots of different feelings, but given the journey that they went on for 4 years, crafted obviously by the man in the opposition dugout tonight, and that is maybe the degree of irony that there is, Norwich were not a fearful, pragmatic team. They were not a team that left a winger on the bench because things might go to extra time. They were a team that got things done within 90 minutes. They were a team that played in a certain way, looked a certain way, felt a certain way. And yes, we're underdogs, but probably harnessed that in a way akin to how Ipswich have done it this year, as opposed to how Norwich have done it, where they have been cautious, overly cautious at points. And look, there have been points where that pragmatism has yielded success, but it's always felt like a sticking plaster, to be honest. And that is probably maybe how I'd summarise the last 3 seasons for Norwich City. Just feels like one big sticking plaster, to be honest. Feels like a club that has lost kind of all sense of self. I've said this a few points in the season. Even when it was winning, it didn't really feel good. It didn't really feel enjoyable. It hasn't really felt like something that maybe people are or want to be aligned to. And that is where I think the difficulty has come this season, this disconnection between what maybe is the thought process of the head coach and his coaching team and maybe even the dressing room of players to maybe what Norwich City want to be, hope to be, and equally what their fan base wants to be. And you've got loads of people pulling in a rope and pulling a rope in different directions. And guess what? That gets put under strain even when periods are going well. And look, the last few weeks, I know that everyone, and there's been a big effort to unite behind the cause, and absolutely right given the circumstances, given they had a shot at reaching the Premier League. But in truth, it's felt like a truce, the sort of truce that my dog has with my cats at home, that they don't go into each other's territories and they he doesn't bark at them and they don't scratch him. It's kind of felt a little bit like that. And I think for this club to get that feeling back, it has to rip the plaster off and it has to deal with some of the issues that have been persistent now for a long period of time. And that is a core of a playing group who have, over 3 years, really struggled to perform. That is this year a lack of real squad depth. That's become evident in recent months and weeks. That is a squad that's too old, that has probably lent too far into the experienced route. And it's about playing style, and it's about getting back to being a Norwich City team that I think, when I think of Norwich City, and I think if you ask people externally about Norwich City, they would say they play nice football, they play attacking football, they are, entertaining, and it almost feels a little bit to me, different eras, different contexts, different seasons, but it feels a bit like when Chris Hughton was in charge of Norwich, and they were they were in the Premier League, and people were telling them that it was good and it was what they wanted and what they needed. But actually, you've got a fan base there and a core there that doesn't like what it's watching, that it hasn't enjoyed the season, even though there have been aspects of it that has been enjoyable. And that's not to say there hasn't been credit and there hasn't been good moments, because to come from 17th in autumn in the way that they have to finishing in the top six is remarkable. The journey that they had to go on, the odds that were against them. But again, it's also this group of players that put them in that position, that left them so much work to do in the first place. It was a core of these players who struggled last year and ended up finishing 13th. You have to rip off the sticking plaster, and you have to, for me, be brave and be decisive within your decision making. And that means being quick paced as well. And I would expect them to be pretty quick out of the blocks in terms of a retain list. I think that will come over the next couple of days. But that also means they have to be bold and decisive in terms of what they want to be as a football club. And that means Ben Napper making decisions pretty rapidly about David Wagner and his future. It is something that has lingered all season long. It hasn't gone away. It's been the elephant in the room in the points that they're doing well. It's been at the forefront of their narrative whenever they haven't. And so that has to be addressed one way or the other. And for me, either you make a change and you shift into a different direction, because I don't see a head coach there that is going to change his ways. And that goes back to basically what I've said throughout this, really, which I think you've got a head coach who delivers a very different style of play to maybe what Norwich fans want, maybe what they expect, and maybe what they were sold probably when the whole sporting director journey began. So it all feels very muddled. It all feels very disjointed. And so it needs some connecting again. It needs the academy to be plugged back in. Kenneth Bowe was here tonight. He's not been on the bench when they've got two strikers who are struggling. Finlay Welsh has had 5 minutes on the pitch. And whether you do rate these young players or you don't rate young players, Norwich City are going to have a situation where they've got Abu Kamara coming back next season. They've got Brad Hills coming back next season. They've got Emmanuel Adebayoga coming back next season. These are really talented players who need pathways. And if they don't have them, as I suspect will be the case with Kenneth Bowe, they'll go elsewhere to find it. And for a club that, particularly financially, is so reliant on generating transfer fees, you cannot keep being in the cycle of signing players who are 30. Of course, you need them. And that's not to say you can completely strip it all back and not have them. But you need to find a balance, and that balance at the moment, that personality, that feeling around Norwich City just isn't right, and it hasn't felt right for a long period of time, and that's very difficult to quantify. That's very difficult to fix, but it just feels like it's been a malaise. Even though, and this is bizarre, I'm stood here after a playoff semi-final second leg, kind of issuing kind of these things, and that maybe exposes, and this is why I think it's been so difficult for people externally to understand it, because if you haven't been plugged into it, if you haven't been a fan that's done the hard yards and seen what this season has been, so strange in feeling, so strange in terms of enjoyment, where a lot of people have said to me, family members, friends, fans that I speak to on a regular occasion, have come out of Carrow Road even after the wins and kind of shrugged their shoulders and found that difficult. That's a problem, really. And it's something that I don't think there's a quick fix to. And that might mean that Norwich City need to take a step back, and it's going to mean a squad refresh, I think. And it's going to need, the average age needs to come down. And this club needs to think about what it wants to be now, because Norwich are staring down the barrel of a season without parachute payments, where they're going to have to sell really, really good players in order to fund what's next. They've got obviously still a transitional period going on in terms of the ownership. There's a lot here that feels in flux and feels disjointed. I think what everyone needs now, David Wagner, fans, players, is clarity. And that really is where this all comes back to Ben Napper, because it feels like now is the moment, now is the time for him to begin to shape what he wants and thinks Norwich City need to look like moving forward. And if that means that, and again, this is brutal, but if you're not aligned with the head coach, then you have to make a change. If you think the squad's not good enough, you have to make a change. And equally, if he feels that him and David Wagner are aligned, if David Wagner can deliver the style of football that he wants, and that, on the evidence of what we've seen this season, feels unlikely, to be honest. But if that is the case, then that needs to be backed up with a show of confidence, be it a contract, be it, I don't know, a public utterance, whatever. That feels like where we are, because what cannot happen is a marriage of convenience now over the summer, and Norwich City not making big decisions. This needs the sticking plaster ripped off it and kind of rebuilt, and Norwich need to look in the mirror and kind of decide what they want to be as a club again. Because even though they finished 6th, it's been such a bizarre season with such a bizarre feeling around it, and I think it's going to take a little while to dissect. But again, Norwich needs to be brave. They need to be decisive. It feels at the moment, and maybe this is the rawness and the emotion of coming off the back of what was a really poor performance in such a massive game. It feels like it needs swift, decisive, brutal, ruthless actions. And I guess that probably starts with the head coach, doesn't it? And a decision around that. So, yeah, look, tough night, really difficult. I think there's bigger questions that will be answered along the line. I think, and I will end by saying this in terms of David Wagner. I think irrespective of people's views on him, he has handled himself with immense credit. It's not been easy to be that person. It's not easy to be that person in a dugout, watching your team lose 4-0. As a human being, and I can only talk from my perspective, this season when he's been asked some very difficult questions. He's not shirked them. He's not got shirty, really. He's been amicable. He's been respectful. And I always think he's answered with probably real credit. So whatever happens and whatever goes on from here, be it he's the Norwich head coach or be it he's not, I think he can walk into next season, wherever that is, whatever that looks like, whoever that will be, with his head held high. And just the final point I want to make to close off, I think we've seen Norwich players end their careers tonight. Ben Gibson, Dimi Yanulis, possibly Sam McCallum, probably Jakob Sørensen as well. Gibson, Yanulis, I think Ben Gibson particularly, for everything that he's been through this season, I think deserves immense credit because he sacrificed a lot this year to get out there for Norwich City. And that man's commitment and what he has offered, I think cannot be overseen. But it's a sad way, I think, for this season to end. I'm going to leave you there. We're going to do a podcast. We're going to obviously have a big dissection of this season and everything that's happened. It's obviously a bit raw here at the moment. Really difficult night. Norwich City have lost 4-0. They've been embarrassed, really, at Elland Road. Good luck to Leeds United. Good luck to Daniel Farke at Wembley. I feel after watching tonight they're going to be in a pretty good place now ahead of that playoff final. And we'll see the way. We'll see the way the wind blows in the next few days and weeks as well. Thank you, finally, on a personal note, to everybody who's watched every single verdict. It started at Barnet, I think, last July, and it's ended here in the middle of May at Elland Road. I think it's been 49 games, over 50 with the cup games. It's been long, it's been draining. I've done every game, every minute of this season, which has probably taken some years off my life. But thank you very much for watching, for engaging with all of the content. We really appreciate it. There'll obviously be plenty more at pinken.com and across our YouTube channel across the summer. And of course, the great thing about football is it starts again pretty soon. Thank you all very much for watching. Thank you very much for your support this season. And we'll see you again very, very soon. Enjoy, hopefully, a lovely summer. See you soon.